Greetings and welcome to another Pokemon 2019 or Pokemon Journeys anime episode review. This time I'm talking about episode 116, so let's get to it. Episode 116 begins with Lance and Diantha about to begin their battle, while Ash, Hop, Go, and the rest of the Masters 8 eagerly await the start of the battle. Ash says that he wonders who he should cheer for. Go wonders if Ash knows both Lance and Diantha. Ash says that he does and that he even got to battle Diantha one time. Now I am surprised that they don't show us a flashback here, which is what would normally happen in a situation like this. But I guess that there is no flashback this time because said flashback would have Greninja in it, who has apparently been deleted from history. This is just adding insult to injury. Hop says that Ash is incredible, and that since even Leon thinks highly of Ash, Ash must have a knack for getting champions to notice him. Which, yeah, I think is true. Also, Hop does not know that Ash also knows Cynthia and Steven, so he does not know just how right he is. Meanwhile, Team Rocket is still streaming the tournament. James says that Diantha is sparkling and dazzling. Truly, the very image of a star actress. Jessie scoffs at this, saying, "A star actress, huh? Well then, let's just see how well she performs." This is classic Jessie. Whenever someone else is lauded as a star or great actress, Jessie always looks down on said someone, or she says something negative about said someone, or she wonders if said someone is really that good. Jessie does this because she thinks that she is the best actress in the world, and that no one can match up to her. So Lance says, "The time has come. Trainers of Kanto, trainers of Johto, bear witness to my battle. And to you, Diantha, as a dragon tamer, may this battle be one my dragon brigade can be proud of." Man, Lance is just such a badass. Also, I love that when he says trainers of Kanto, they do cut to Kanto to show several trainers watching the tournament on TV, and Richie and Sparky are among these trainers, which is very cool. I also love that when Lance says trainers of Johto, they do cut to Johto to show several trainers watching the tournament on TV, and Jackson or Vincent and his Meganium are among these trainers, which is very cool as well. But even cooler is the fact that Marina and her Misdreavus, or Little Miss, which is its nickname, and Jimmy and his Typhlosion are also here. Marina and Jimmy first appeared in The Legend of Thunder, which marked the beginning of Pokemon Chronicles. This is in fact the first time that Jimmy has appeared in the main anime and the first time that Marina has appeared physically in the main anime. So it is very cool and unexpected to see them here. In response to Lance, Diantha says, "You have said it well. We are linked together by Pokemon and by this battle. I too shoulder hopes and dreams. Those of the trainers of Kalos, as I stand here today. Lance, you and your Pokemon, how marvelously will they shine? I cannot wait to find out." Man, Diantha is just so elegant, charming, and graceful. Also, I love that when she says those of the trainers of Kalos, they do cut to Kalos to show several trainers watching the tournament on TV, and Shauna, Sawyer, Tierno, and Trevor are among these trainers, which is very cool. I love that they decided to take advantage of the unique situation in this episode to bring back so many familiar faces, which is something that they did not need to do, which is why it is so nice that they did do this. Now I do wish that they could have added more characters to these scenes, like say gym leaders and members of the Elite Four, but I am satisfied and happy with what we got. Also, I hope that something like this happens with every other champion, since there are a ton of characters from Hoenn, Sinnoh, and Unova that could make cameo appearances like this. So in response to what Diantha said, Lance says, "Then let us begin." Go says that sparks are flying from the get-go, and Ash comments that this will be an amazing battle. The referee then enters the field and he goes over the regulations for the battle. Each trainer can use 3 Pokemon. There is no limit on match length or switching out Pokemon. Whoever makes all 3 of their opponent's Pokemon unable to battle will be the winner. Additionally, trainers are only allowed a single use of only one of the following: Mega Evolution, C-Move, or Dynamax. Lance and Diantha then send out their first Pokemon at the same time. Diantha's first Pokemon is Aurorus, which is a new Pokemon of hers, though she does use one in the games. Lance's first Pokemon is Dragonite, which is cool since it has been a while since we last saw Lance's Dragonite. Also, it is surprising that Lance begins with Dragonite, which is his true ace, not Gyarados like all the promotional material for the tournament suggested. It is worth noting as well that Lance is starting off at an overwhelming disadvantage, since Dragonite is weak to rock and it has a double weakness to ice. So with both trainers and the Pokemon ready to go, the battle finally begins. Aurorus begins with Light Screen. Dragonite counters with Hyper Beam, which lands a direct hit on Aurorus. But since Hyper Beam is a special move, its power is cut in half by Light Screen. So Aurorus is able to easily take the hit. There is also the fact that Aurorus has a resistance to normal type moves. Also, Dragonite is left immobilized since it used Hyper Beam. Seizing this opportunity, Aurorus uses a very super effective Blizzard. But despite its huge weakness to ice and the fact that it is pushed back, Dragonite stands strong. In response to this endurance, Diantha says, "Bravo," while Lance praises Dragonite for holding on. Dragonite then roars to show that it really is quite tough and that it can now move again. Dragonite then uses Body Press, which lands a direct hit, and it deals severe damage to Aurorus, who has a double weakness to fighting. This shows that Diantha is not the only one taking advantage of a double type advantage. Also, since Body Press is a physical move, Light Screen did not dull its power. But despite taking a lot of damage, Aurorus stands back up. Since the previous Body Press was so effective, Dragonite uses Body Press again. But this time, Aurorus counters with Reflect, which decreases the power of Body Press. This allows Aurorus to withstand the attack. This also means that Diantha's Pokemon now have Light Screen and Reflect on their side. It is worth noting that in the games, Diantha's Aurorus does know Reflect, Light Screen, and Blizzard, so the anime is faithful to the games here. And in fact, the other 2 Pokemon that Diantha uses in this battle also use moves that they know in the games. Back in the locker room, Iris comments that it looks like Aurorus has an aurora around it because of Light Screen and Reflect. Steven says that Diantha fortified herself with 2 defensive moves. Alon says that Reflect and Light Screen will go away in time, so they are not all powerful. Cynthia says that Diantha also wants to pressure Lance, and that Diantha now has the upper hand in the battle. Leon says that Lance will not be faced by this, and so it is impossible to say who will win at this point. I love that Leon says this because it shows that Leon knows Lance is strong, and Leon clearly respects Lance. This is of course because Leon has battled Lance. So, Aurorus uses Rock Slide and Dragonite uses Twister. Lance says, "Underestimate me and you'll be in for a shock. Have a taste of my well-trained Dragon-type moves." Sure enough, Twister is able to cut through the Rock Slide and it crashes into Aurorus. Dragonite still takes a hit from several remaining chunks of rock, but the Twister demolishes Aurorus even with the protection provided by Light Screen, and Aurorus is knocked out. Dragonite on the other hand is clearly hurt badly, but it stands strong. Lance says, "Placing walls before us will only make us strike even harder." Lance then smartly chooses to withdraw Dragonite so that it can get some rest. Diantha withdraws and thanks Aurorus. She then sends out her second Pokemon, which is Gourgeist, another new Pokemon of hers. Though like Aurorus, Diantha does use Gourgeist in the games. Also, I do wanted to mention that when I predicted what would be Diantha's third Pokemon for this battle, I said that from the Pokemon she uses in the games, Gourgeist is the one she would most likely use, which turned out to be the case. When Gourgeist enters the field, it is shown that Reflect and the Light Screen are still in effect. Now James is surprised to see Gourgeist, and Meowth mentions that Jessie caught a Gourgeist in Kalos. Jessie yawns like she does not care, but this is because she does not realize what James and Meowth are talking about. Once she does, she is beyond excited when she sees Gourgeist, and she says that Diantha has good taste. I love this moment because not only is it funny, but it's nice to see Team Rocket remember old Pokemon of theirs, and that they still care about said Pokemon. So Lance then sends out his next Pokemon, which is Gyarados. Lance exclaims to Gyarados, "We will break through those walls," and Gyarados psychs itself up. Gourgeist begins by using its signature move, Trick or Treat, which hits Gyarados, who is now also a Ghost-type Pokemon as a result. It is worth noting that this is the first time that Trick or Treat has been used in the anime. Also, I love that the animation for it here in the anime is basically the same animation it has in Sword and Shield. Lance comments that this is a troublesome move, while Diantha simply smiles. Gyarados then uses Aqua Tail, but Gourgeist easily shrugs off the hit, thanks to its typing and the power of Reflect. Though Diantha comments that they would have been in trouble without Reflect, because Gyarados is powerful. Lance then says that Light Screen will be gone soon, and that this will be the deciding moment. Gourgeist then uses Shadow Sneak, while Gyarados uses Dragon Pulse. Gourgeist is able to strike first, severely damaging Gyarados, who is now weak to Ghost-type moves. But Gyarados still manages to fire off Dragon Pulse, which lands a direct hit, just as the Light Screen vanishes, so Gourgeist takes some good damage, though it is still standing. It is worth noting that Dragon Pulse is a special move, so Lance really was aiming for the moment when the Light Screen vanishes in order to deal some good damage, which is his best option since the Reflect will remain in effect for longer, because it was used after Light Screen. Lance is surprised because Gourgeist was not defeated, even though it took a direct hit without Light Screen to protect it. So Lance calls for a super effective Ice Fang, hoping to finish off Gourgeist. But Gourgeist uses Phantom Force to avoid the Ice Fang, and it appears behind Gyarados. Gyarados turns around in order to counterattack with Dragon Pulse, but Gourgeist once again uses Phantom Force to avoid the hit and to appear behind Gyarados. Gourgeist then basically slaps Gyarados with Phantom Force, which deals a lot of damage since again, Gyarados is now weak to Ghost-type moves. Once again, Gyarados manages to still fire off the Dragon Pulse, despite taking a hit. Just like before, Gourgeist is hit and it endures the hit. But Gyarados is unable to hang in there any longer and it is knocked out. I have to say that it does sadden me to see Gyarados lose like this, especially since it did not defeat an opponent. Team Rocket, on the other hand, are very happy because Gourgeist won. They even cry as a result. Meowth says that he is moved to tears, even though this Gourgeist is not on their team. While James says that Diantha is the first competitor they will root for. So Lance withdraws and praises Gyarados for doing its best. He then sends out his third Pokemon, which is Hydreigon, another new Pokemon of his. It is worth noting that in Pokemon Black and White 2, Lance does use a Hydreigon in the Pokemon World Tournament, so maybe they are referencing this. Diantha is unfazed by Hydreigon. She says that she has a strategy to deal with it. Gourgeist begins by using Trick or Treat, which adds the Ghost type to Hydreigon. This shows that Diantha's strategy to deal with Hydreigon is the same strategy she used to deal with Gyarados. Lance says that he does not care about Trick or Treat and he calls for a super effective Dark Pulse. The Dark Pulse lands a direct hit and Gourgeist flinches as a result. The Reflect also finally vanishes, leaving Diantha's Pokemon completely unprotected. I love that Team Rocket are shocked when they see that Gourgeist is hit and left vulnerable to a follow-up attack. Jessie even exclaims, "Gourgeist, pull yourself together!" But Hydreigon uses Dark Pulse again, which once again lands a direct hit. But this time, Gourgeist is knocked out. Now I love that Lance takes out Gyarados' Pokeball and he says to Gyarados, "We did it, Gyarados. We owe this victory to you." This shows just how much Lance cares for and values his Pokemon. Even though Gyarados was defeated without defeating its opponent, the damage it did allowed Hydreigon to easily defeat Gourgeist, and thus, Gyarados still helped the team in the end. So it's nice that Lance acknowledges and appreciates this. Jessie is left devastated because Gourgeist lost, but James tells her to root for Diantha's next Pokemon. Diantha then withdraws and thanks Gourgeist. She then sends out her third Pokemon, which is, unsurprisingly, Gardevoir. Now I love that before Diantha sends out Gardevoir, Ash says Diantha's next Pokemon has to be. Once Gardevoir is out, Ash excitedly exclaims, "Gardevoir, I knew it!" Meanwhile, Lance says that he was waiting for Gardevoir. It is worth noting that Lance is once again at a huge disadvantage, since Hydreigon has a double weakness to Fairy. Diantha then says, "Let us show you our greatest performance," and she Mega Evolves Gardevoir. This surprised me because I always expect that the trump card will be saved for the end. But in this case, it makes sense, since Diantha has her back against the wall, so she needs to go all out from the start to ensure that she can make a comeback. So, Mega Gardevoir enters the battlefield. Ash is very excited when he sees this. Gardevoir begins with Shadow Ball and Hydreigon counters with Tri-Attack. Both moves clash, causing an explosion. This shocks Diantha and Lance exclaims that offense is the best defense. The first strike takes the win. Hydreigon then uses Flash Cannon, showing that Lance and Hydreigon are equipped to handle Fairy-type Pokemon. But Gardevoir uses Psychic to disperse the Flash Cannon. This shocks Lance, while Diantha smiles wickedly. This shows that she isn't completely without malice. Gardevoir then uses a beautifully animated Moonblast to hit Hydreigon. While Hydreigon does manage to hang in there for a bit, it is ultimately unable to withstand the Moonblast and it is knocked out. Lance withdraws and praises Hydreigon for battling well. He also says to Hydreigon, "Leave the rest to Dragonite." Lance then sends out Dragonite, so we are down to the final showdown. Diantha says to Gardevoir, "Do not let your guard down until the end," showing that she does not underestimate her opponent even though she has the type advantage and Dragonite is not at full strength. Now at this point I thought, wait, this is the final battle. Lance is up against a Mega Evolved Pokemon and he has not used his Dynamax band. So will he Dynamax Dragonite? And indeed, Lance says, "Dragonite, we have not yet demonstrated everything we can do." He then withdraws Dragonite and he proceeds to Dynamax Dragonite. This surprised me, even if I did see it coming seconds before it happened. I was surprised because the only Pokemon Lance has Dynamaxed before this episode is Gyarados. And all the promotional material for the Masters Tournament showed Gyarados extensively. I figured that they decided to make Gyarados Lance's ace/main Pokemon and the Pokemon that Lance would use his ultimate technique/transformation with. I did say in at least one previous video that this was strange, since Dragonite has always been Lance's ace and his main/signature Pokemon, both in the games and in the anime. In the end, it turns out that they misled us, since Dragonite goes on to do more in this battle than Gyarados. Dragonite is also the last one standing from the team, like a true ace, and it ends up being the Pokemon that Lance uses his trump card with. Therefore, Dragonite is still Lance's ace/main Pokemon, which is great. Not only because this is how it should be, but also because we get to see a Dynamax Dragonite, which is not only something we have never seen in the anime prior to this episode, but it is also something different for Lance, since we have already seen him Dynamax Gyarados. And it is also more exciting because Dragonite is the one that deserves to Dynamax in the final showdown while battling the other trainer's ace. I do want to point out as well that back when I reviewed episode 12 of Pokemon Journeys, I said that it is likely that they had Lance use Gyarados because they wanted to show a Dynamax battle between Lance and Leon. So Lance had to Dynamax his Pokemon, and back then, a Dynamax Dragonite could not exist in the games, because Dragonite was not available in Sword and Shield. Hence why they had Lance use Gyarados instead of Dragonite, who Lance would have probably opted to use instead, since Dragonite is his strongest Pokemon and Lance was facing the strongest trainer in the world. But now, a Dynamax Dragonite can exist in the games, since Dragonite was added to Sword and Shield with the Crown Tundra expansion. Hence why Lance now gets to use and Dynamax his real ace. So Dynamax Dragonite enters the field, which is just so cool. Also, this reminds me of the giant Dragonite that appeared back in the original series. Maybe this was a Dynamax Dragonite 23 or 25 years in advance. Iris is delighted when she sees Dynamax Dragonite, and Ash is as well. This is obviously because they both have a Dragonite. Hopefully this inspires Ash to Dynamax his Dragonite in a future battle. Alon comments that unlike Mega Evolution, Dynamax has a time limit, so the entire battle hinges on this. Lance says that Dynamax allows Dragonite's stamina to go beyond its limits. It is worth noting that Dynamax does increase the total HP of a Pokemon, and when a Pokemon that has taken damage Dynamaxes, it recovers HP equivalent to its new total HP. Since Dragonite took some good damage when it battled Aurorus, Dynamaxing has the extra benefit of increasing Dragonite's longevity. So saving Dynamax for Dragonite was a very smart move. Diantha says, "So, you had a trick up your sleeve, but will it stand up against my fairy-type moves?" I find it strange that she says this, since surely she knew that Lance has a Dynamax band. But maybe she is referring to Lance's use of Dynamax to give Dragonite more vitality. So Gardevoir uses Moonblast and Dragonite counters with Max Hailstorm. The Moonblast cuts through the shards of ice and it lands a direct hit on Dragonite, who endures the attack by guarding. I love that Dragonite then stands there like, "What? Is that all you've got?" Now it is worth noting that Max Hailstorm reveals that Dragonite knows an Ice-type move, but it is unknown what move this is, since Dragonite did not use an Ice-type move earlier in this battle, nor has it ever used an Ice-type move on screen. So it soon starts to hail due to the Max Hailstorm. I do want to mention here that in episode 99, Ash's Gengar also used Max Hailstorm, and while there was hail during the attack, there was no hail afterwards, which is wrong since Max Hailstorm always causes it to hail afterwards. Since now there is hail after Max Hailstorm, I guess that someone realized their mistake. So the hail soon peppers both Dragonite and Gardevoir. Diantha comments that Lance is using quite the risky tactic, and she then wonders if maybe Lance is just that confident that Dragonite can endure even through hail. Lance smiles confidently, revealing that yes, he is quite sure of himself and of Dragonite. Dragonite then uses Max Strike, which lands a direct hit on Gardevoir, though Gardevoir brushes off the damage and it uses Shadow Ball. Surprisingly, Lance calls for Max Whirlwind, which has no effect on Gardevoir. Go is shocked and he comments that Dragon-type moves do not work on Fairy-type Pokemon. But Ash exclaims that Lance is not aiming to hit Gardevoir. And indeed, the Max Whirlwind swallows the Shadow Ball and both moves disperse. This goes back to what Lance said before, that offense is the best defense. Diantha then says that she has figured out Lance's plan. The hail then once again peppers Dragonite and Gardevoir. Ash exclaims that Lance's plan is to hold on using Dynamax and to strike when the Dynamax ends. Meaning that he basically used the Dynamax to allow Dragonite to endure for as long as possible, while chipping away at Gardevoir slowly, which is why he had the Dragonite use Max Hailstorm, and why he used up one of his 3 Max moves by using Max Whirlwind defensively. Once Dragonite returns to normal, Lance plans to have Dragonite use its full power to strike the weakened Gardevoir. Now this is an interesting and rather unique plan that leverages the mechanics of the games well. Lance knew that he and the Dragonite did not stand a chance if they battled normally, since not only is Dragonite weak to Fairy-type moves, but it is also hurt from its previous battle, and half of its moveset is ineffective against Gardevoir, who is immune to Dragon-type moves, and it also has a double resistance to Fighting-type moves. Therefore, Lance decided that his best option is to have Dragonite outlast Gardevoir in a prolonged battle of attrition. This is a clever and daring strategy, so I commend Lance for going with it. And this shows just how confident he is of himself and of his Pokemon. Also, I do want to point out 2 things. First, Max Strike decreases the speed of all opponents. This is not mentioned here in the anime, but assuming that this applies to the anime as well, Gardevoir not only took damage, but it also ended up slower, which might be part of Lance's strategy. Second, if Lance had used Max Knuckle instead, he could have given Dragonite an attack boost, thus making Dragonite's final attack stronger. Though this is only if Dragonite uses Body Press as its final move, which is not what ends up happening. But since Gardevoir has a double resistance to fighting, using Max Knuckle and relying on Body Press to end the battle would not have been smart, hence why Lance did not do this. So Dragonite returns to normal and Lance confidently calls for Hyper Beam. However, since Diantha knew what Lance would do, she is ready to retaliate. She says, "Checkmate," and she calls for Moonblast. Dragonite fires the Hyper Beam, but Gardevoir avoids the attack by jumping. Gardevoir then uses Moonblast while in midair. Since Dragonite cannot move after using Hyper Beam, all it can do is take the hit, which it does like a champ. This causes a massive explosion. Once the smoke clears, it is revealed that Dragonite is still standing, showing just how tough it is. However, it soon falls and it is knocked out. Therefore, Diantha is the winner. Now this is not surprising since I went into this episode confident that she would win. But Lance put up a good enough fight that I did wonder if perhaps he would win at least once during the battle. So Lance thanks and withdraws Dragonite. He then says to Diantha, "You had me at your mercy. Your victory was magnificent." Diantha says, "I too greatly enjoyed our time together." Lance then says, "I look forward to seeing how you will battle against Leon." This is something that I am also looking forward to. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Leon smiles. He is likely happy because he knows who he will face next. Steven says that Diantha is an enigma because her battles change based on what Pokemon she uses. Leon says that Diantha would call them performances and not battles. He also says that he cannot wait to perform alongside her. Hopefully, Diantha does give Leon a challenge. Meanwhile, Ash says, "A battle between champions. That was amazing." Go exclaims in excitement that Diantha will face Leon, while Hop says that his brother will win, though Diantha might be a tough opponent with her skillful support move combos. One can only hope that this will indeed be the case. Team Rocket then interviews Diantha for their show. Meowth says that they will get live comments before anyone else, He then wonders how Diantha is feeling right now. Diantha waves and she thanks everyone in Kalos for their support. Jessie then says that Diantha has to finish the next battle with Gourgeist, and she really drives this wish home, which leaves Diantha confused. This is such a funny scene and I really love all this focus on Gourgeist. So on the way back to the locker room, Lance runs into Ash, who calls out to Lance. Lance greets Ash and he says, "My battles end here. You hang in there." Lance then walks away. I have to say that this exchange was very disappointing. I was hoping that Ash would say something like, "That was a great battle. You are so strong. It's such a shame that you lost. I wish I would have gotten the chance to battle you. I would love to battle you as well," etc. Instead, Ash basically says nothing, which is such a shame. They once again rob us of meaningful interaction between Ash and the other members of the Masters 8. Excluding Iris, who has interacted a fair bit with Ash during the tournament. Speaking of Iris, she soon approaches Ash. Ash says that Iris is up next. Iris says that she is so nervous, but also so fired up, that she just wants to get out there and let loose. Ash says that Iris is up against Cynthia, so Iris should battle with everything she has. Iris says that she will and that she will win a battle before Ash. Ash says, "Oh, now you've said it." Iris then leaves while saying "see you later" and that Pikachu should cheer for her as well. Ash and Pikachu both wave at Iris. The episode then cuts to the battlefield where Cynthia and Iris soon make their entrance. I love that the announcer says that this will be a clash between the dignified Queen of Sinnoh and a young champion. The dignified Queen of Sinnoh is definitely a wonderful title for Cynthia. Cynthia and Iris then send out their first Pokemon at the same time. Iris's first Pokemon is Excadrill, which is cool since we get to see it again after so long. Also, I did say that perhaps Iris would use Excadrill, so I am glad that I was right. Cynthia's first Pokemon is Gastrodon, who we also have not seen in a long time. Ash and Pikachu are both very happy to see Excadrill. Gastrodon and Excadrill then clash, thus beginning the third match of the tournament, which will hopefully be amazing. But that's the episode. So overall, I absolutely loved this episode. The battle between Lance and Diantha was simply amazing. And not just because it was an intense, epic, and a cool battle between two amazing characters, but also because of how technical of a battle it was. Between using defensive status moves to counter specific categories of moves, to seeking to exploit and circumvent said defensive status moves by using specific moves, to using moves that add a type to another Pokemon in order to give said Pokemon a new weakness that can be exploited, to using Dynamax for more than just gaining access to the stronger max moves. This was a very strategic, nuanced, creative, and intellectual battle. A battle unlike most of the ones we have seen before, since it was a battle fought with wit and strategy instead of just pure power. A battle fought with as much brain as brawn. A battle that felt like a competitive Pokemon battle fought between two very skilled trainers, which is the kind of battle that a tournament like this deserves. As someone who loves competitive Pokemon battles, I really appreciate just how much thought went into scripting this battle, and simply analyzing the battle was almost as fun as watching it. I really cannot emphasize enough how much I enjoyed this battle, and this is the kind of battle we wanted to see in this tournament. This is what a battle between members of the Masters 8 should be, and it single-handedly restored my faith in this tournament after the disgrace that was the previous episode. Beyond the battle, I also loved this episode because Lance and Diantha are just two fantastic characters that I cannot get enough of. Lance is just so cool and Diantha is just so elegant and graceful. I especially love their speeches before the battle, which showed just how proud they are of their title. They take their position as champion very seriously, and they know how much prestige, honor, and worth there is in this title, which is why they carry and conduct themselves in a way that does not bring a shame to the title. They battle in a way that brings renown and respect to the title, and they know that as champions, they carry the will, dreams, and hopes of their region, and of the people from said region. All of this just makes Lance and Diantha that much more amazing, and it's fitting that this episode has Champion's Pride in it, because this is exactly what we witnessed. Finally, I also love that we got to see so many familiar faces in this episode, and that Team Rocket remembered Jesse's Gourgeist, which not only led to some funny moments, but it is also just a very cool throwback. Honestly, my only gripe with this episode is that they continue to waste the opportunity to have Ash interact with the other members of the Masters 8, again, excluding Iris. This was exemplified by Ash's interaction, or rather, lack of interaction with Lance. Hopefully this will be rectified in future episodes, but I doubt it. At least, Ash will surely interact with those he battles. While this is a big gripe for me, it did not detract too much from this episode. It truly was a spectacular and marvelous episode. Definitely a huge step up from the previous episode, and hopefully every other episode of this tournament will be just as wonderful. But that's the video. As always, leave your own thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and would like to see more like it, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I love Pokemon and I love making videos on both the anime and the games. Also, please consider clicking the links on screen so that you can check out more videos like this right away. Thank you very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.